Hello and welcome back to another dish of Carrie's Gardening channel. So in this video here I'm going to be giving you some tips for starting your perennials from seed. So I'm going to be walking out of the greenhouse here, and we're going to be going over to one of the perennial beds because it's pretty warm in here. So this is one of our flower beds of yarrow here, and it's a lot cooler out here than what it was in the greenhouse. So when starting your perennials from seed, most of your perennial seeds do need what they call cold stratification. So what I do with my perennial seeds when I get them is I will take the seeds, I will take the packs, and I will put them in a sealed Ziploc bag, and I will put them in the refrigerator for at least 2 weeks before I plant them. So a lot of times what was happening was a lot of your perennials, they come up the first year and they establish themselves, and they bloom in their second year. So when I was starting my perennials from seed, I was taking up a lot of space in the greenhouses where they weren't going to bloom that year. So what I started doing is I would plant my annuals and stuff, and then when that stuff was transplanted out and I had the greenhouses emptier again, or empty, I would start planting my perennials in there, and then they would get sowed later on in the season. So you just want to make sure that when you do that, after you plant them out, you typically start planting them in like August, or you can plant them in July. It depends on how quickly they grow and when you can actually get them in the ground. You do want to make sure that you keep your soil moist but not soggy, so that your plants have a chance to go in and establish themselves. And I do recommend using a heavy-duty weed barrier fabric like this right here in your perennial beds. It helps keep the weeds out. It helps your plants to grow a whole lot better. And it also helps for moisture retention. So when you have a lot of weeds growing, they start competing with your plants. And you start getting weed growth on your plants, and they can actually choke your plants out if the weeds get thick enough, because it will starve your plants for food, it will starve them for water, it will starve them for sunlight. So this weed barrier fabric here, you can see there's a few weeds here. They're just so simple to pull out. And when you're doing a whole big area, it's a whole lot easier to just weed a few little spots like that than to weed an entire area. Like this over here, I do have to get the landscaper's fabric down in it because this just is not working. It's not down in it, and it's creating a mess. It's a lot of time pulling weeds, and it just doesn't work. So we are going to be putting that down in here. And you want to make sure that you plant them early enough before your first frost is going to be, so that your plants have a chance to get themselves established before winter comes. Some people do choose to mulch their plants. That's up to you on that. For some extra winter protection, make sure that you're always checking your growing zone and checking your perennials that you're buying to make sure that they will actually be winter hardy for over the winter time. But I have just found that it's so much easier to start your perennials later on. That way then you're not pressed for space, and they're not going to bloom the first year, most of them anyway. But if they are going to bloom, like if they have the potential to bloom that year, then I will start them early so that I'll get my blooms the same year. But if it takes them a whole year to bloom, then I'll just start them later and they'll get transplanted out later. So when you do sow your perennial seeds, you want to make sure that you're keeping your seed starting mix moist, but you don't want to have it soggy. And I keep checking on them to make sure that they're not drying out as they're germinating. And you do want to harden them off to the outdoor conditions before you just plant them out. And it will also give you a chance to figure out where you're going to plant them at. Make sure that you have the soil right for the plants, and that they have the right lighting requirements and the right watering requirements. Like some plants don't like what they call wet feet, so you don't want to plant them in an area where the soil is extra retentive of water, because you stand a big chance of root rot. So if the plant calls for drier areas, you can figure out where you're going to plant them at while they're growing. And my best advice for when you actually start transplanting your plants out into the flower beds is that you already have everything prepared. You have all of the holes burned in your fabric, and you have your water supply there already hooked up, so that as soon as you start planting your stuff, you have the water right there to start watering it in, so that it doesn't suffer from getting too dry while you're trying to get your other stuff planted. And another tip that I recommend doing is actually taking your containers and soaking them in water and making sure that your soil is nice and moist before you actually start planting your plants out. That makes a huge difference in helping to reduce transplant shock, making sure that your soil is nice and moist before you're actually transplanting them out, which helps a lot, because what can happen is if your soil for your seed starting media gets dry, it can be very difficult for that to absorb the water back in after you plant them. So just giving them that little bit of a soak really helps a lot. So I hope that you found this video helpful. So if you like my video, please like, comment, subscribe. Please don't forget to hit the little notification button. Notifies I put a new video on. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Bye.